I'll begin this afternoon's session with a brief introduction. Welcome to the Canadian Institute of Forestry's National Electronic Lecture Program. My name is Sharon Young, and I will be hosting today's session. Today is Thursday, June 13th, 2024, and this is the second session in the e-lecture series entitled Equity in Canada's Urban Forests. How can we engage people in urban conservation where they live? This series is brought to you by Tree Canada. The CIF-IFC is very pleased to collaborate with Adrina Bardakjian and the team at Tree Canada to host these webinars. Today's webinar is titled A Path Toward Tree Equity, Starting the Journey. A special reminder that ISA certified arborists are eligible to receive one continuing education unit for this webinar. Please email electures@cififc.org with your full name and ISA certified ID in order to obtain the ISA continuing education unit. Once we verify your attendance, we'll send your information to ISA for them to process. Today, we have Adrina Bardakjian, Director of Research and Engagement from Tree Canada. Dr. Bardakjian has worked in the field of urban forestry for 20 years in both research and practice. In her role with Tree Canada, she leads the development of multiple research collaborations and professional engagement initiatives, such as the Canadian Urban Forest Network and the Canadian Urban Forest Conference. With that, I will now pass it over to Adrina.
Thank you, Sharon, and the CIF for hosting this series, and thanks everyone for joining us today and tuning in. Equity in urban forestry is the theme of our upcoming Canadian Urban Forest Conference this October in Winnipeg. Over the coming weeks, we are exploring concepts of social equity as they relate to urban forestry and community engagement. In the interest of profiling initiatives that focus on people where they live, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Janet McKay, Executive Director and founder of LEAF. Janet holds an Honors BA in Environment and Resource Management and a Permaculture Design Certificate. In 1996, she founded LEAF, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to the protection and care of the urban forest. Initially started as a neighborhood project, LEAF now operates in 17 municipalities within the Greater Toronto Area. In 2009, Janet became a founding member of the Green Infrastructure Ontario Coalition, which seeks to make living green infrastructure the new normal. With a focus on community engagement and bringing stakeholders together, Janet finds and stewards creative and collaborative solutions to urban forest challenges. Thank you, Janet, very much for being here with us today and sharing your insights and experiences. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Adrina, and thanks, Sharon. I'm very pleased to be here, and welcome everyone. Thanks for attending today. When Adrina asked me to speak on this topic, I hesitated because I don't feel like I'm an expert. I know I'm not an expert on this, but what I think I can share is a little bit of insight into our journey at LEAF, and it is an ongoing journey. But I hope that there are some things here that folks can take away that will be helpful in charting your own journey along this path. So I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude and appreciation to Indigenous peoples as the original stewards of this land and recognize their ongoing work as caretakers of Turtle Island. I'm located in Tkaronto, now known as Toronto, which in Mohawk means where there are trees standing in water. I acknowledge that this is territory of many First Peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. For those that are joining from outside Toronto, if you're not familiar with the treaties and the traditional territories in your area, I invite you to explore them at native-land.ca. This land is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. As a white settler, I acknowledge the rights, the enduring presence, and the resilience of Indigenous peoples. I also acknowledge those who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought through the transatlantic slave trade. This city was built on stolen land and stolen labor of Black, Indigenous, and racialized people. LEAF is committed to advancing anti-racism and anti-oppression through continual learning and relationship building. I want to first give folks just a very brief picture of LEAF and who we are. So LEAF stands for Local Enhancement and Appreciation of Forests. We are a nonprofit and we're dedicated to the protection and improvement of urban forests. So for over 25 years, we've been engaging residents through planting and stewardship programs. And really, we want to create vibrant communities where everyone benefits from a healthy urban forest. So our first plantings were in backyards, and that was 1996 would have been our first backyard plantings in a neighborhood in Toronto called South Riverdale. And we really evolved over time. That program has evolved and grown. As Adrina mentioned, we're now working with 17 different municipalities in the GTA. But that really happened as very slow evolution. And as we evolved, we added other programs, and those were more community engagement programs, things like guided tree tours, community tree plantings, and youth engagement programs. So currently we have 13 full-time staff and usually about 5 to 10 seasonal staff that come on during our busy periods, planting periods. So our annual budget is just over $1 million, just to give a sort of a snapshot of who we are and our size. So relatively small, but mighty. So today's agenda, I'm just going to go over very briefly the benefits of the urban forest. I'm fairly certain that the audience today is well aware of those. I'm going to give you a few facts and figures about Toronto's urban forest, talk a little bit about how we begin to address inequities, and then really focus on our journey so far and give you some practical resources that I hope you can take away and make use of. So we define the urban forest as all the trees and shrubs growing in our city. So that includes in ravines, in natural areas, parks, school grounds, front and backyards, streets, everywhere. In Toronto, about 45% of the urban forest is on public land and just over half or 55% on private land. So private land does make up a very important component of the urban forest, and that is the case in most cities. This is a nice graphic of all of the many benefits that the urban forest provides for us. Some of these are measurable, some are very hard to measure, but making them none less valuable. Everything from energy savings and purifying our air to creating habitat, reducing stress in an urban setting, reducing noise and protecting us from UV rays. Certainly building a sense of community and connection to nature, and very much supporting our mental health. So large healthy trees are the ones that give us the most benefits. The more leaves a tree has, the more benefits that it provides. And we are starting now to be able to put dollar values to those benefits. And many municipalities have undertaken urban forest studies using things like iTreeEco to actually measure their urban forest and to put a dollar value to the benefits that it provides. Things like air pollution, abatement, energy conservation, stormwater management, etc. And these studies are amazing because they make the case to councils for investment in the urban forest, investing in its maintenance, in its protection, and its growth. So when we can actually put a value to the benefits that it's providing, the case for investing in it becomes an easier one to make. In Toronto, we have a canopy cover target of 40%, which the city would like to reach by 2050. It's a very ambitious target. In 2018, Toronto's tree canopy cover was estimated at 28.4 to 31%. And that was an increase from 2008 to 2009, when it was measured previously at 26.6 to 28%. So that was good news. The tree population also increased from 10.2 to 11.5 million trees in that period. But the structural value of the urban forest remained pretty much unchanged. In fact, it dipped a little bit from 7.1 billion to 7.04 billion. So I'm going to take a little bit of a closer look, and this is the study that you can find on the city's website. All of the links in here that I'm providing are going to be live links in the presentation when it's shared. So you'll have all of those with the presentation. Digging down a little bit deeper, what we find from the study is that total leaf area actually decreased by 11%. And tree condition ratings also went down. So in 2008, trees rated as good as or excellent were 82%, whereas in 2018, that had gone down to 70%. And so those things negatively affect the structural value of the urban forest and also the value of the ecosystem services, even though canopy cover as a measure may have gone up. The total leaf area and the health condition of the trees went down. So it's really important to look at all of those indicators. Canopy cover is just one measure, and it tends to be what most municipalities are using for their target. But it's really important to look deeper at some of the other measures to really understand the health of the urban forest and what it's able to provide us. The other interesting thing and concerning thing is that impervious land cover has increased by 1.3% since 2008. And that's mostly happened on single family residential lands. And those are the lands, again, that are most available for tree planting. It's where the majority of soil volumes exist. And so this is a concern because plantable space in the city has decreased by 2%. So a lot of issues there. The one we want to talk about today is tree distribution. And we know that tree distribution in Toronto and in most, if not all cities, is inequitable. And so just a few maps here to show some of the trends. So on the left, you see family income here with low incomes being in red, higher incomes in dark green, excuse me. And on the right, tree canopy cover, low canopy cover being red and high canopy cover being dark green. And so we can see that in areas of high income, we tend to have higher canopy cover. And in areas of low income, we tend to have low canopy cover. If we go a little bit further and we look at the relationship between canopy and race, here we can see the percentage of BIPOC people in a neighborhood is illustrated by the dots. And so the larger the dot, the higher the percentage of BIPOC people living in that area. Canopy cover, the darker green is an area of higher canopy cover. And so what we see here is that in areas where we have a high percentage of BIPOC folks living, we tend to have lower canopy cover again. Why does this disparity exist? It's really part of historic and ongoing economic and race-based discrimination. So housing discrimination has been one thing, and other racist policies and practices that have really marginalized communities of color. There is this intersectionality of tree equity. It's very complex. This is not a simple problem, and it's not one that's going to have a simple solution. There are environmental, social, and economic factors at play here, and there is a lot of interrelation amongst these things. But if we look at some of the main causes, things like redlining, which was a practice which discriminated against people of color, denying them mortgages and the ability to purchase property, for example. We look at real estate where, expensive neighborhoods tend to have high high numbers of trees, they have larger lots. There are many reasons why those neighborhoods tend to be greener. And also trees as a commodity. We're looking at trees as a commodity as opposed to like a human right. And so where there is affluence, there are usually more commodities. The three on the bottom, agency, engagement, and resources, are ones that as a community organization, we are in a position to be able to affect. The top three are very systemic, and they're going to, those are going to require many stakeholders and a lot of work to reverse or to correct. The ones on the bottom, do folks have agency? Are they being engaged? Do they have the opportunity to engage? And do they have adequate resources? These are things that we can try to influence as an organization working in the community. I do want to mention that eco-gentrification is something that we have to be aware of. There are social implications to greening projects, and they can be negative. And so in our efforts to green a neighborhood, we can have other effects like attracting wealthier residents, which increases housing costs, which then displace vulnerable people. And so we've really got to be conscious about this. Any greening initiatives really have to be combined with measures like rent control and retaining a percentage of affordable housing. It's something that we must be conscious of. I'm not going to go into it today. And again, I'm not an expert by any means, but it is something to be aware of and to try to understand and try to avoid. So how do we begin to address these inequities? And this is certainly a question that we asked ourselves at LEAF a few years ago. Where do we start with this? It seems like an overwhelming kind of issue, and how can we make a difference? And so I'm just going to share with you our journey. Like I said, it is the journey of a relatively small nonprofit organization. I hope that you can take from it some information that will be applicable to your own situation, whether you're coming from government, from an academic institution, or from perhaps there's some nonprofit folks here today too, which would be great. I just really want to share our path and what we have done so far. See, there's a hand raised. Do we want to entertain questions, or shall I continue, Sharon? I'm happy to.
Let me take a look. I'm gonna allow this participant I'm gonna give him the permission to talk. And then please say your name and where you're calling from, and then you can say your question and Janet would answer it. Go ahead.
Maybe it was a mistaken hand raising.
Maybe. Go ahead,
Okay.
Janet. We can just leave out the questions at the end.
For sure. Okay. Okay, so the first step we knew that we needed to do was really just listen, learn, and recognize. So an important thing for us to remember, and when I say us, I'm speaking, for myself and also the organization as mainly a white organization, is that we don't ask BIPOC folks to do the work for us. We need to do our own research, and that takes time and effort. And we really need to understand colonialism, systemic racism, and white privilege, and really recognize our own place in that. This is hard work. This is uncomfortable work, but it is so necessary, and it is the foundation of everything that comes after. So I can't stress enough how important this has been. One thing that we did was we created a reconciliation and anti-racism committee. And I must give a shout out to my staff team for being amazing. I I have not been doing this really, certainly not on my own, and I wouldn't even necessarily say that I have been leading it. I think as a leader, it's important to establish this as a priority for the organization and to assign adequate time and resources, but you don't have to do it yourself. And in our case, we have this committee made up of one manager and at least 2 staff members. Those folks volunteered to be on the committee. And we established that committee in 2021. And they have really provided the leadership on this for the organization. It's been amazing. They survey the staff, board, and volunteers, identify needs, and recommend actions. And they also plan and sometimes lead the training sessions that we do. Their work is ongoing, and we do have annual training plans. And each year we look at that membership of the committee and just give folks an opportunity to continue on or resign. Again, it's voluntary. The big key is that they are provided adequate time within the work setting to do this work. So this has been a really great way for our organization to have staff really take an important role in leading the organization through this change. These are some resources that we have used that have been very useful and that we actually now include in our onboarding for new staff. Again, these links are going to be provided with the presentation. These are all ones I would highly recommend that everyone make use of. And then also some other justice, equity, diversity, inclusion resources. These have been extremely important. There are a lot of resources available. It can actually be overwhelming. And so I just wanted to provide some of the ones that we found very useful. There are many, many more. The Sustainability Network I want to mention in particular. I'm actually taking their BIPOC and Go Inclusive Workplaces Lab right now. It's 6 2-hour sessions over 3 months. And so you work with peers and there's an amazing facilitator. It's just a wonderful, safe place to be able to learn about this, to be able to ask questions, to be able to practice and really begin to build some confidence around these issues because it is difficult. I think that the training overall is just incredibly important to prioritize, and that means all levels of the organization. So again, I would say especially leadership. We need to be ready to accept that we need training in this, and it's not okay for an organization's leadership to say, well, my staff need training, but I don't have time for that. Really, it needs to be everyone in the organization, especially leadership, and dedicating that time and some funds is very important as well. That sends a message about how important it is. Customized training for your group, we've found to be quite important. So as I mentioned, there are lots of resources and lots of reading that you can do online. Getting some customized training for your own group is really important because it allows you to get into topics and issues that are specific to your organization. There are a lot of great trainers out there willing to offer their expertise. It is so worth it, and it is so valuable to have some of those experts share. And there's also value in the staff and board all being together in doing this. So yeah, these are some of the resources, but I can't really stress how important the training is. It is ongoing, but we have spent a lot. We spent, excuse me, probably the first couple of years just doing learning and training. I wanted to touch on psychological health and safety because I think it's also something that is foundational to this work, is ensuring that within our own organizations, we have a culture of safety. And so ensuring that all staff members feel that there's a culture of authenticity and purpose. These are things that are prerequisites for diversifying your staff. Making sure that you have an environment where if you are looking to hire BIPOC staff, they are going to come in and feel safe and feel comfortable and feel part of, it's safe for them to become part of this group. So again, what we did, and actually we started this in 2018, a psychological health and safety committee. Again, it's similar. It's made up of a manager and some staff. They undertake biannual staff surveys, and then from those create action plans for the organization. So really what we're creating is a safe place to voice concerns and make suggestions. And we're going to make mistakes. We're not always doing things right, but we are listening, and we are trying to make that change. And I think that's what employees need to feel, that leadership is listening and that there is real effort to make positive change. This resource is amazing, Workplace Strategies for Mental Health, actually developed by Canada Life, and they made it available for free. In particular, we use the Guarding Minds at Work as our survey tool. They have a lot of resources on this website. It is fantastic. And so I would highly recommend, if you haven't done this sort of work already, that this is a really great resource that can take you through that and support your efforts. Next, I just want to talk about other investments in employee well-being. And this is something that as an organization, again, as a small nonprofit, we in this sector, environmental nonprofit especially, we have, I think, a history of like a struggle complex, if that makes sense. So we are small, we don't have a lot of resources, we are, trying to do good work. And so sometimes I think it, in this field, there's almost like an acceptance that we are not going to be able to do as well for our employees as some other sectors. While there is some truth in reality to that, there are also many things that we can do. And we're really trying to push that boundary and make sure that the nonprofit sector is the work that is done is recognized as incredibly valuable work and incredibly needed work. And so these are some of the things that we have been working on. Fair and equitable, transparent compensation and benefits. So even though we're a small organization, we have moved towards having pay ranges that are transparent. Again, very important if you're going to open up your organization and try to invite lots of diverse folks into it. Being fair and transparent is very, very important. We're striving to become a living wage employer. We have not gotten there yet. Living wage employer is a designation in Ontario. That organization looks at like a benchmark for like what a living wage should be by city. And so we're striving to become that. We're almost there. We are not quite there. In addition to the financial compensation and the benefits, having supportive and flexible human resource policies is very, very important. So building trust with your employees. We've just rehauled our HR policies. I can just give you a couple of examples of changes that we made. So we had 10 sick days, 4 of which could be used as sort of personal emergency leave days. We changed that to be 10 personal emergency leave days. So whatever you feel is a personal important reason for you to be off work is fine. And we don't ask for the reason that folks are off, and we certainly don't ask for doctor's notes. So that's something that we're able to do. Again, it's just putting trust in your employees. There are other things that I could share, but moving in that direction of just being supportive employers and flexibility. So work from home options. Some folks really want to work from home. Some folks don't necessarily have a suitable space to work from home and prefer to work from the office. And so we are flexible in that, and we are really working hard to make sure that we can maintain that flexibility. Professional development is also something that we really strive to provide. So guidance, also time and funds that are dedicated for individual professional development. Two-way performance feedback. So again, providing feedback on employee performance, but also listening to feedback, excuse me, on performance by both managers and also the organization as a whole. And then something else that's been really great is internal peer training and skill sharing. So giving folks the opportunity to share their skills with their coworkers. Excuse me. These are all really important things. Again, when we are trying to diversify our staff, we want to make sure we have these things in place before we make a concerted effort to do that, so that we're in a good position to support and welcome all kinds of different and diverse folks. And so when we are looking to diversify the staff team, we're looking at things like our organizational chart and looking at that with a JEDI lens, looking at succession planning and organizational growth, doing some intentional recruitment. So everything from the way we do our postings, how we write them, what we include in them, where we post them, the interviews and how we conduct those, and selection and onboarding, all of this needs to sort of be put through a screen. And again, there are some great resources. Charity Village that I mentioned before is one that has some really good information on how you can do this. Training and onboarding, just making sure that that JEDI training is part of the onboarding for everyone. That allows everybody to know that this is an important thing for the organization, right? It places it in a position of importance, and that's really important for anyone coming on. And then ongoing support. So that psychological health and safety committee, really, again, leaning on that as a safe place for folks to go. Again, in a small organization, it's hard if there are issues that you want to bring up, but you really would like to stay anonymous about it. It can be hard in a small organization. So knowing that there are folks on that psychological health and safety committee who's specifically have volunteered to take on that role of support is really important. And it just allows for another safe place for folks to go to if they need to. Building board capacity. This is something we are beginning to tackle. It is going to take a lot of effort and time again. So training, both internal and external training. We found that having really clear expectations and procedures is important. Again, if we're going to diversify our board and welcome new folks in, it's important that we're very, very clear and transparent about how things work, because assuming that people know or can fit into some of the norms and maybe the ways that we have fallen into as an organization is not fair or realistic. And so being super clear is very helpful. And so having a board manual with all of these things laid out really helps you get clear and helps it's easy for someone to come in and really understand how the organization works. Intentional recruitment, again, right now for us, priorities are BIPOC members and also youth members. Those are gaps on our board currently, and so we're working to fill those gaps. One of the important things too is relationship building amongst board members. And so having something built in that allows for like support and mentorship of new board members, that might be a pairing of board members, existing board members with new board members, but really being open and ready for change. We're going to ask folks to come in and give us new ideas and different ideas. We need to be ready to listen to those and act on them. And looking at our board performance on an annual basis and assessing that as a group is also really important. This civic action resource, Board Shift, is excellent. They provide lots of resources, and also they offer a space for posting. So when you join as a member of Board Shift, which is not expensive, it's like $200 a year, you can post your board positions through Board Shift, and they also have individuals who are looking to join boards, who are specifically looking for BIPOC folks to join. And so this is an excellent way to kind of match and to find board candidates that that can add a lot to your board, new perspectives, different backgrounds. I mean, this can only improve what we do. Now I'm going to get down into the specifics of tree equity and some of our program improvements that we've made. Doing a time check here. These are two excellent resources from Nature Canada, and I recommend them highly. I use them a lot, and they are both really excellent resources. Another one from American Forests, this Community Action Guide. The Vibrant Cities Lab is a sort of an offshoot of American Forests. They have excellent resources on lots of different topics. This one in particular is building a community-driven process to advance tree equity. And then Arbor Day. Arbor Day has under its umbrella this Alliance for Community Trees. And through that, they actually provide environmental justice training. It is excellent training, it's frequent, and it's very reasonable. So again, another excellent resource to take advantage of. We are really committed to this idea of building slow relationships. And this is important in terms of how do we move to an organization that is able to and positioned well to address this issue of tree equity. We cannot do it on our own. We need to build relationships with others, but we need to build slow relationships. And that means taking time to explore why. Why are we going to partner? What value do we bring to this partnership? Are we ready to partner with another organization? Are we well trained, or do we have adequate capacity? And then we go out and start looking and say, okay, who are the potential partners that can help us achieve tree equity? Who are the folks that we already have connections with, and who do we not have connections with? And there are a lot that we don't have connections with, specifically folks and groups within the BIPOC community that we need to be talking to, we need to be listening to. And so it's really important that we look at co-creation and co-management of projects and of efforts, and evaluate our work with honesty and respect. It's really about building trust, and we've begun to do this with various groups and individuals. It is an ongoing process, but again, very foundational for being able to actually go out in the community and address some of these issues. Really important to use data and community input to inform efforts. So collecting data and using it. And collecting data on race and ethnicity, income, age, all of these things help us understand who are we serving, who are we missing, and conducting meaningful engagement with communities. And that really means following that mantra of nothing about us without us. So if we're going to go into communities that have low tree canopy, we need to be understanding why is it, and what do people in that community actually want and need? How do we make those relationships and allow ourselves to kind of understand in a different way what the issues are there, so that we can then actually work with those folks to co-design programs and actually understand with them what would success look like? What would success look like? What are the metrics we need to use to measure success? How are we going to get there? and formulating those plans together. Another really important thing is to give voice and platform. And this is our urban forest demonstration garden at the TTC station at Bathurst. And this beautiful mural was installed by Thomas Sinclair. It is absolutely stunning. It is now the backdrop for our garden. And we just recently held the unveiling of the mural, and Elder Jackie Lavallee, she opened with a song and a Thanksgiving address. And this was an incredible experience, and it's just a wonderful, it's a wonderful space. And if you know that location, it's very, very urban. It's very, it's sort of like the back alley of a street at the right downtown core of Toronto. This mural, I can't tell you how much it is spiritual. It is just a wonderful thing, and we're so thankful for this opportunity. And we worked with TDC on this as well. Obviously, it's their property, and I think they're incredibly pleased as well. You can see our service berries kind of framing, and then in front is the native garden with the mural as a beautiful backdrop. Removing barriers to program participation. This is something that we have begun to do, we are still doing, but one of the things that, an easy thing that we learned that we needed to do was just include more diverse people in our materials, so that sends the message that all people are welcome to come and participate in our events and in our programs. We also, one of the recommendations in the report from Nature Canada was to incentivize private property tree planting. And so, I mean, we already have a subsidized program, but we're working to further incentivize that by offering our services for free in some of the low canopy neighborhoods in Toronto. Updating our website to comply with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. We are working on that now and making sure that we are compliant with that, even though there's a threshold. We're not an organization that is large enough to have this as a requirement by law, but we are going to comply with it voluntarily. And then continuing to offer virtual events as well as in person. So we've just found that the virtual events actually removes a barrier of transportation for some folks. And so we're continuing to offer those as a way to be inclusive. And then finally, one of our 4 strategic priorities in our 5-year strategic plan is to apply an anti-racism and anti-oppression lens to organization-wide. And so we're in the midst of that. So some of what I'm talking to you about today, we're in the process of doing that. By no means are we close to being finished. We have so much work to do. And then just digging down a little bit deeper into our programs, the backyard tree planting program, like I said, is subsidized. So it's a cost share between the resident and the municipality. What's important here to know is that it is very much a personalized service. It is not about giving out free trees or free saplings to people, which drives me crazy. It is about helping people make good choices around what to plant and where to plant it. And so we do a consultation, an arborist consultation for every tree that we plant. Folks are getting a 5 to 7 foot tree, the full planting service and tree care resources, and we're there for follow-up support. On average, most people are paying about $230 for that, all of that together. So we did secure some funding to be able to offer that service for free in some of those neighborhoods that I mentioned. Equity deserving neighborhoods that have low canopy cover. What we're hoping is that we can collect a lot of data and a lot of input from folks so that we learn. We really want to learn from this. And we'll see where it goes. But the key here is that people need support. It's not just about giving out free trees. It doesn't work. If they get planted at all, it's not in the right spot and it's not in the right conditions. And so giving people that support and that help is what really is has made our program a success. The Toronto Community Housing Planting and Stewardship Program we offer in partnership with Toronto Community Housing and the City of Toronto Forestry section. So we do a lot of resident engagement in this program. Back to that idea of meaningful community engagement. So we're going in, we're piggybacking on existing meetings and events. We're not asking people necessarily to come out and do more work. We're coming to them, asking a lot of questions, collecting information. How do you use the space currently? Do they want trees? How else do you use that space, and do you want it preserved for other things? When we get to the actual tree planting plan, the species and the planting locations are important things for folks to have input on. And then we do give support to residents who are interested in becoming part of tree care teams, so that after planting, residents have the agency and the resources to actually care for the trees on the properties. City of Toronto provides the trees and the planting services for this program. It's amazing. Increasing access for BIPOC youth. So we have two programs, the Young Urban Forest Leaders and Young Ravine Leaders. And both of these programs seek to support Indigenous peoples, racialized individuals, newcomers, two-spirited LGBTQ plus persons, and non-binary people. These are folks that have not necessarily been well represented in the forestry sector, the urban forestry sector, excuse me. So this is a free program. It really is aimed at offering skills, mentorship, and connections to youth, opening up potential career paths for them, and supporting them in undertaking some community engagement activities and career development. These are all explained and linked to our website, so you can definitely find out more information on the website. Finally, I wanted to mention a tool that we've just been involved in creating. So American Forest and City of Toronto, and LEAF have been working for the last year on developing this tree equity score analyzer. And it's a tool, it's a map-based tool that allows you to see a lot of data on one map. So these are the things that you can see: tree canopy, building density, income and employment, race, surface temperature, health, language, and age. And when we start to see that on one map, and we can see it at a very high level, and we can go right down to the lot level, it becomes a powerful tool to inform how we begin to address this issue of tree equity on the ground. And so the great thing about this, and the thing that I love most about it, is that it's open and free and accessible to everyone. And so it's not a tool that is designed for like the municipality to use on its own. It is a public resource. So you can learn about the urban landscape you live in, you can evaluate data, you can look at areas and prioritize in terms of like, where are the areas that need trees and where are the areas where we could actually plant trees that have plantable space. Is paving removal necessary? Like, what would be needed? And you can actually sort of create these planting scenarios with the tool that allows you to say, in this area, if we want to move the tree equity score, which is one number that takes all of those things into account, and it gives it a tree equity score. If we want to move the tree equity score by 10 points, let's say, how many trees do we need to plant in this area? And so it gives you that number, and it also gives you the benefits that those trees would provide. So you can make a case, for example, for investment, whether that's a grant proposal or other advocating to city councilors, whatever that might be. It allows you to make a case, basically. And for us as an organization, a tree planting organization, it certainly is going to be a tool that we can use to look at our city and think about where we prioritize what kinds of projects and who we need to engage in that process. Sorry, a couple final things, and I know we're running out of time, and I do want to have time for questions. These are bigger things that we're doing. Some of the things that I've been talking to you about have been program changes that I won't call them easy, but these things are big things that we are looking at as an organization, is rethinking our relationship to the land. We're planting on public lands. Where and how and in partnership with whom, and who are we consulting and who are we engaging, and how do we make these efforts align with the support and the wishes of Indigenous peoples? That is a big question for us that we are thinking about and that we need to grapple with. And finally, all of this work has really led to an organizational transformation. And we are rethinking the vision, mission, and values of the organization. So we got to reevaluate who we are, what we're trying to do, and give opportunity for the new voices to contribute to the organizational identity. So really taking another look at, like, what are those core vision, mission, values, and how have they changed and evolved? Thank you. Happy to take some questions if there are some.
Thank you, Janet. That was great presentation. Now let's move on to the questions. While we're waiting for participants to finish typing their questions, let's take a moment to fill out the post-webinar survey. I'm just gonna bring it up in a moment. So there are 2 questions in total. You may need to scroll down to see the second question. All right, Janet, the first question for you is, the maintenance of large trees is also much more expensive, especially in urban areas. Have you analyzed these costs, especially in the context of climate change?
Have we analyzed the costs? I wouldn't say we've analyzed them. I think City of Toronto has done some work on that. I think the maintenance of all urban trees is it's a huge issue that does not get the attention that planting does. And we're an organization that plants trees, but we are also very, very focused on the maintenance and the survival of trees as well. And I actually prefer to call it tree establishment rather than tree planting, because we can plant hundreds and thousands and, you know, as many trees as we want. If they don't survive, then our efforts are in vain. So yes, the costs of maintenance are significant. However, if we do a good job of right tree, right place, right care in the early years, hopefully some of those costs can be mitigated or lowered. I think that is the case, especially in on private property where the property owner has more control. You know, in dense urban areas where we're competing with things like development and infill and utilities and all of those things. I mean, the space for trees just is getting squeezed smaller and smaller. And even trees that are established and that are mature and that are doing well can be very negatively affected by those development pressures. And so in the face of that, they require extra care and extra TLC. And so, yeah, we haven't analyzed the cost of that, but it is certainly a reality and a challenge.
Thank you, Janet. Moving on to the next question in the Q&A pod. In some cities, there are newer, more affordable neighborhoods that have much smaller lots. Often we see a tree planted in these yards when they are developed, but they are removed within a short time frame, either by the city or the homeowner, because they grow too large for the lot. How do we improve long-term greening in these denser neighborhoods?
Another big challenge. Well, I personally feel that developers should be held to the tree canopy target that the municipality has set. In other words, in a development, the developer should be required to plant trees so that within however many years, let's say it's 10 or 15 or 20 years, the trees planted will actually achieve the canopy cover target that the municipality has set. So that means much more than just one tree every other lot, for example. It means some kind of program and support for residents to plant in the backyards too. The question of how small the lots are is an extra added on challenge to this. There's also the lack of soil quality in those new developments, where usually topsoil is stripped off and maybe a couple of inches is replaced and then sod goes on. We're often going into those neighborhoods and trying to plant. It's very difficult. So trees may be removed because the lots are too small, or there's a sense of that, but there's also poor soil quality. There are a lot of reasons. So I think the way that we develop and the message that is sent from the municipality needs to be one that, again, holds those developers to account to reach those targets, because we're setting those targets and then we're letting developers just plant one tree every other lot. How do we fill the gap in those new neighborhoods, right? So those are a couple of thoughts. That's not an easy one. We're very keen to work with a developer who would be interested in piloting a backyard planting program. I have some thoughts about how that could work. I won't go into those now, but just to say that I think that could be something that really shifts the paradigm. And we all know that those new developments where trees are lacking, something has to change. Something has to change there.
Thank you, Janet. Next question for you is the tree equity score a universal metric, or do municipalities develop their own scoring method?
So American Forests has a formula. So if the tool is developed with American Forests, there is a standard sort of formula for the score. American Forest has developed, this is the first Canadian tool, but there are other US cities that you'll see if you go to the website that have developed a similar tool. And so the supplement, so there's some core data that they always use, and then there's supplemental data. So you can add in supplemental data, but those are more for comparative purposes. So the tree equity score itself remains, consistently calculated. That's not to say that other cities aren't creating other tools, not through American Forests, that may use different calculations.
Thank you, Janet. Next question for you to answer is, are there resources to identify urban heat island effects and their correlation with canopy coverage?
This tree equity, the score analyzer includes heat measures. So this tool does show the overlap with those. So where you have low canopy and where you have high heat. York Region has also developed a tool that looks at heat as well, I believe. It's not with American Forest. They developed their own tool. I can't remember who they worked with on that. It might have been Tree Plotter, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, York Region has a tool that also looks at heat island. Those are the two that I know of.
All right, next question for you. Did you already name trees to increase diversity and inclusion? Giving some Indigenous names, for example, could make local population more involved? That's
a great point. Yes. One of the things that the next step that we're going to do at our urban forest demonstration gardens, that one of them was in that picture with the beautiful mural. We are going to work with Indigenous partners to provide the Indigenous names of the plants in those gardens. So that's an exciting project that we're going to be undertaking in the near future. But yeah, that's an excellent suggestion. Thank you.
right, moving on, there's a few comments and also questions for Janet. The first one is from Michael Rosen. Wonderful presentation. An issue I see that is a cause for increasing concern is a disconnect with nature and how little concern most urban people have for trees. I'm interested in your observations as to how best to motivate urban people who have no interest in trees or who take them for granted.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we need to be, I think some of the things that I touched on, like relationship building, listening, talking, having conversation. Why are people feeling disconnected? Personally, I feel that experience can have a huge impact on someone, and it only takes a moment to have that, to have a realization. And this is, I think there can be lots of reasons why folks may seem disconnected to others. If they really are or not, I mean, that's a question, but I think that listening and providing opportunities for connection, for us as a small organization, that's the role that I see, is providing those opportunities and trying to make sure that we have eliminated as many barriers as we possibly can to participation in those, and then letting nature work its wonder in terms of that feeling, or that transformation, or that that emotional experience that can then hopefully move folks along in that journey, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Janet, for sharing your suggestions. Before we wrap up, I just want to quickly remind everybody that this session has been recorded and the recording will soon be posted on the CIF lecture webpage. And if there are no more questions, I would like to bring this session to a close. Thank you all for participating in today's webinar session. And once again, thank you very much to Janet for this great presentation. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.